Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am joined today again by my dear friend and mentor, Hamilton Souther, who is a ayahuascero, founder of Blue Morpho Ayahuasca, Blue Morpho Academy. He's an author, a speaker. You're super into AI. He's just the man, the myth, the legend, literally probably created Hogwarts himself based on all of your epic experiences and epic work that you've done for this world, helping everyone heal. So thank you so much for joining me today, Hamilton.
Awesome, Barrett. Thank you so much. That's a great intro. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
I normally write them out, and this time I was like, I'm just gonna riff because I've said it enough times, and you're one of my favorite humans. So
Thank you so much. It's a deep pleasure. Thank you.
yeah, so you and I recently did 8 ayahuasca ceremonies in the Amazon.
We did 8 and 10 nights.
Yeah, that was a
That
lot.
was real. That was. That's a good. That's like a good stretch of ceremony.
Yeah, there were. So I love to be in the medicine. I love to learn in the medicine. And there were definitely like nights 7 and 8 where I was almost like, wow, I wish I could take a night off. Or maybe I should take a night off. And I was like, you only got one or two more, like just keep going. This is what you're here for. But it did kind of feel like a lot in the end.
It is.
And
I
I
mean,
was,
that's a tremendous amount of ceremony. The four. I mean, four is a lot, right? And then it's
mhm.
exponential. Each one you add to it. But it is good to listen to that voice if somebody is out there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go on that retreat. That's the long retreat with all the ceremonies." It's good to listen to that voice that says, "Oh, maybe I don't need all the ceremonies right now on this retreat. Good to take a night off if necessary." That's all important. Important listening to yourself and stuff like that while having those kinds of experiences.
Absolutely. I was super impressed. There were two or three people on our eight ceremony stint with us who had never done any medicine before.
Yeah, that was their first time, right?
Whoa.
They showed up for the big one. I think you got to
Yeah.
pace yourself through it. You got to pace yourself. But yeah, that's a tremendous introduction to visionary plants and especially ayahuasca coming to it for that time. But the dedication, if you do that, I think is tremendously valuable. And then if you think about integration with it, you have to be ready to integrate for over a year. That's not just
Mm,
do that first out of the gate and then that's over when the retreat's over. It's actually really just starting.
hmm.
And those people need to be ready for tremendous change over the next part of their life. They need to be ready to spend a lot of time giving to themselves after the experience, taking a lot of time, like all the additional time they would have, like any alone time they would have, any rest time, even sleep time needs to be dedicated to the continued processing of that amount of transformation over such a short number of nights. Although some people from the retreat have been writing and just telling us about how really beautifully it's going. So that doesn't have to be
Mm.
a difficult process by any means. It's just requires that level of dedication. You might be deciding to stay in a few more nights than going out. You might be deciding to eat at home instead of going to some restaurants. You might be deciding to take a little more time to rest than normal, and really give to yourself.
Beautifully said. And the thing that I've noticed with ayahuasca is she's very specific with your intentions. So if you show up and you're only going to do one ceremony, she has a very clear arch in what she'll do in that one ceremony. And if you show up and you're going to do 4 ceremonies, then she's very clear about how she handles all 4 ceremonies as a sum. And so what was interesting for me was I'd never done 8 in a row. I'd only done four a couple times. And watching that arch of how she introduced me, how she blasted me off, one night I had almost no experience on the medicine whatsoever. That was night number 4 for me. And then how nights number 5, 6, 7, 8 were just like a whole other dimension, whole other thing after I handled like the basics in the first 4, where she was very much like, last time you were here, it was a very gluttonous experience. And so are you really prepared to do what you say you are, which was my intention this last time, was to really commune with ayahuasca, to not seek more cups, but instead seek the lessons in one cup. and bond with her and sit with it, sit with whatever it was that came up and really laser in on what was being shown to me. And she challenged me on that, and it was
How did that go?
delightful.
Yeah, what happened? What happened in there when you did that? That's an interesting, development of relationship.
Yeah. Well, so for anyone who hasn't listened, in January, my approach was sort of Hamilton holds the key to the breakthrough on DMT. Let's put as much ayahuasca in as possible. And it didn't go well for me. By the very last day, I had this like massive ego breakdown, and then she finally kind of let me through after I surrendered to the process. So this time I was all about I'm just here to surrender to the process. I'm aware of through psychics and channelers and astrology, I'm aware of where I'm going to be after the ceremony, and I just surrender to however you want to get me there. And night one was kind of mellow. Night one, well, for the first four ceremonies, I was actually helping you, helping with the ceremony, which was a little unexpected for me to sit on stage and to help people to the bathroom and to help with problems that arose. And so there was my night one was a little hectic in my brain, sitting with medicine and feeling very on guard, in a sense where like I used to be a TV show producer. And as a TV show producer, my job was to problem solve. And it was to foresee a problem a mile down the road and fix it before it happens. And so I noticed myself having that approach during ceremony.
Hmm.
And my reflection upon that was that I wasted a lot of energy being ready for the problem I foresaw down the road that never ended up happening.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I didn't really relax into my own journey. I was very present for everyone else in the room, and adopted then for night two the idea that I would wait until I was called upon before I would problem solve. And that gave me much more of a dropped in experience, a
Hmm.
much more beautiful experience with the medicine. Um, I think that was the night I went to Egypt, where I had been getting these downloads before I came to the Amazon about, I'd been listening to Aubrey Marcus talk about Egypt, and in what he was saying with this interview with Makad Brooks, I was feeling different sensory perceptions in my own field open up based on what they were talking about. And that's never happened to me from listening to a podcast episode before. And so I brought that into my ceremony, and I said, I want to teleport, time port, interdimensionally travel to Egypt. And I want to go to that same, um, the same location that they were at when this one thing happened. And you had said something earlier in the day, that day, about visual perception in the medicine being one of the lesser reliable sources of information in the medicine. And that really struck a chord with me. And I have always been trying to pay attention to what you've taught me about how to navigate using the heart and the third eye as like a GPS coordinate. And I could never visually see where I wanted to go. And so my strongest intuitive sense is claircognizance. It's divine knowing. And when I heard you say that about the visual field being less reliable, it sort of resonated with me that, well, why am I trying to rely on a sense that is inherently not my most intuitively strong sense? And so I went into that ceremony going, okay, I want to time port, I want to travel. And as I was trying to visualize this temple in Egypt, I couldn't see it. And there was all the kaleidoscope of all the beautiful things. And I'm trying and I can't see it. And I'm like, okay, then I'm done trying to visualize it. And instead, I'm going to inherently know that I'm there. And as I did that, it was almost like I still used the heart, I still used the third eye, but instead of triangulating out visually, I triangulated up, and it blasted up through the crown and created this whole multi-dimensional space around me where almost like my visual field behind me was more reliable than the visual field in front of me, because I was now inherently knowing what was behind me. And then slowly, once I knew I was there in this temple, the visual field would kind of begin to match. And that was incredibly powerful for me because I had never thought to try to do it with a different sense before. I thought it was this way. I thought it was in front of the face, in front of the third eye. And instead, for me, it was up and out the crown that made interdimensional travel possible.
Oh,
That was
amazing.
night number two.
That's
Yeah.
wild. So what happened in Egypt? Did anything come and interact with you, or was it just being able to go there and see it?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, I had this pharaoh start talking through me. And,
Yeah.
and so I remember it started, and it was different than when something talks to me. It's usually there's sort of like a representation of it, and I can hear the voice in my head. But this was starting to activate my own vocal cords, and I was like, "Wait, I'm sort of I'm part of the leaders of this ceremony right now. I can't just be broadcasting out some crazy Egyptian message into ceremony." Although you later told me I should have. So that was pretty cool. I have no idea what he said. Um, I look forward to going back now that I have that sense of how to travel. And sort of just to jump ahead a little bit, but with ayahuasca being such an intelligent medicine, I went into the final ceremony, ceremony number 8, thinking, asking ayahuasca to reaffirm to me the lessons that I had been taught all the whole time so that I didn't forget. And lesson 8, or ceremony 8, I was obsessed with going to swim with orcas. And I kept saying, bring the orcas to me, bring the orcas to me. And halfway through ceremony, I'm saying, like, bring me the orcas, bring me the orcas. And ayahuasca has not brought me the orcas. And finally, I was like, hey, Mother Aya, like, we've been super cool this whole time. You know, you've been so generous in giving me everything I've asked for. And I've been asking for orcas all night. Why have you not delivered orcas? And she said, do you remember what your intention was going into tonight's ceremony? And I said, to reaffirm the lessons. And she said, mm-hmm. And so, is there another way that you have learned during ceremony that you could be with the orcas if I did not bring them to you? And I went, oh my
Ooh.
God, the interdimensional travel, like with the Egypt. And she goes, mm-hmm. And so I went, okay. And so I blasted from the heart up through the crystals of the third eye and out the crown, and immediately found myself swimming in the depths of the oceans with the orcas. And then my visual field completely began to match everything. And I was swimming with the orcas in the deep blue. And I was like, okay, powerful lesson.
Wow. That's an
Yeah.
amazing lesson.
Yeah. So a great skill set development. And so then going backwards, night number 3 was a massive ego death for me, like a massive ego death, to the point where I was in my head sure I was going to die. It felt like way more than I had expected, and I kept trying to breathe and trying to surrender. And in my head, I'm screaming at you. I'm screaming for you, as I can imagine other people in the room probably were too. And I was like, Hamilton, I'm gonna die. And I could just see you in my energy field. You know, you were sitting not far from me, shaking the shikapa, and you were shaking the shikapa, and you'd look over at me and you'd be like, Barrett, you're you. You're not gonna die. You're you. You got you. And I got you. And I got you from here. And I'm not coming over there because you're not gonna die. And I was like, okay, all right, all right. And so I got to have that moment of really tackling the fear and where did
Mm.
that fear come from. And I was sort of laying on my back, and there was this merkaba of energy inside of me that was sending out different substances from my body. Like all at the same time, I felt like I needed to burp, vomit, pee, shit, cry, have gases escape me in ways I didn't think my body was capable of. And I felt so sure that if all of that happened in the same moment, I would actually dissolve and die. And I didn't want to ruin everyone's ceremony by dying. But I was laying there, and my higher self was kind of like up in these clouds above me, looking down at me, just watching. And and so I said, okay, I'm struggling right now because I'm afraid. And what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to die. Okay, well, if Hamilton says he's got me, then that means I'm not going to die. If I die, he'll fix it. And so,
It's just not gonna die. It's
yeah,
enough.
I'm not going to die. And so, if I now know I'm not going to die, what can I do differently in this experience? And then it became
Wow.
a lot more fun. Um,
How did it become fun? What became fun? Most people listening would be like, "Wait a second, how's fun about this? You're about to thinking you're gonna die, like it just poof into light." So, how did it become fun from there? That's interesting.
well, so once you turn off the fear
Mm,
and you turn on the surrender,
mm,
and I began to surrender deeply, and it was like this dissolution of every breath I was existing and not existing, but there's no such thing as not existing. So
mhm.
in each breath, understanding the boundary between what we think is and what we think isn't, what I think I am, what I think I'm not, the I am versus the we are, and sitting in that dissolution. And then as I surrendered and watching all of these beautiful colors that I always get when I get to this kind of like core of creationism, this space of breakthrough in the medicine. It's like these vibrant magentas, these lime greens, this vibrant yellow gold color, a lot of white, and they're electric and they're always moving and making shapes. And so then it was like my higher self had this message for me, and it was this shedding of these frequencies that I couldn't take with me as I stepped into the next evolution of myself, as I stepped and rose in my power of truly rising to be of greatest service to others. These lower frequency things couldn't come, and they
Yeah,
essentially had to die off in ceremony. And that's where for me the fear was of like, oh, I'm dying. And it's like, not I'm dying, but there are parts of me that are leaving to
yeah.
make way for the higher frequency energy to come and fill it.
What a beautiful lesson to see that the lower frequency energies that also represent fear also identify with death, and that the movement
Mm,
of them, the movement of those energies causes the trigger within us to think something that's fundamentally not true in that moment, but it seems very true in our thoughts. I mean, the thoughts are as real as they get, and the feeling associated with them is very real as well. And it can be, a harrowing experience to face that within ourselves. But how interesting it is to really hear at the moment of the surrender and at the moment of starting to let that aspect of ourselves go, that we find out that those are lower vibratory frequencies, lower resonant frequencies, and that they're both fear and associated to the idea of death. And what a gift ultimately to have those be released. And that's one of the things that I've always found so powerful and amazing about ayahuasca as a medicine, is that it can take us to that frontier within ourselves, and so few things do, and actually have something incredibly positive come out of that lesson. And for us, we see that as an up leveling. That's like a true up leveling in energy, up leveling in capacity, up leveling in the training of the ego and the self, and coming to that greater place of real service and greater place of transcendence, having now shed those kind of lower frequencies or shadow aspects of our ego. So that's incredible.
yeah. And, the only thing I've ever really had an experience to the extent of that has been Bufo as
Mm,
well. Even though I've done heroic doses of mushrooms, the lessons are a little different, have been different for me. I've heard of other people having massive ego deaths on mushrooms, but for me, it's Bufo is the only other thing that really has gotten me to that space of, I think if I were to die, it could be now.
mm.
And but Bufo's way less gentle about it, in my experience.
The toad was less gentle.
A little bit, yeah. Have
Well,
you done? You still haven't done Bufo?
no, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm waiting for the right time, I would say.
fair enough.
Yeah. But I'm interested. The more I hear about it, the more interested I am. I think the time will come to meet the toad. I'm interested in seeing how we dance.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like
So
bringing
where did
your
it take you?
knowledge.
You said night 4. You said you had less have an experience. That's interesting too. After the ego death, it's sort of like a night of integration. That's important for
Right.
people to know that there's this interaction in a relationship that's taking place. It's not just consuming a substance or consuming the way you would think of a drug, and that there is this consciousness on the other side of it that now has millions of pieces of anecdotal evidence for. There's now millions of trip reports of people saying, "Wow, on the other side of ayahuasca was consciousness." Some people say a spirit, some people say her, and very clear interaction, vibe, energy associated with that, and tremendous teacher and ascended master or true wisdom provider.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times, people think, well, I consumed the same amount of ayahuasca. Why did I have like almost nothing happen or nothing happened? And often sometimes that you're getting integration or you're processing what took place the night before. So that's also, I think, a valuable lesson in that for others who haven't had that experience, that if that happens, look into that possibility that it's a gift from the spirit to have that night off. And it wasn't about going visionary or having full send or anything like that. It was really about integrating such an important lesson and really rooting, I think, the teachings of that ego transcendence.
100%. And over the course of the 8 ceremonies, it was really my goal to never take a second cup. Because in January, I was all about 2 cups, if not name for a third cup. And so this time I was like, okay, 8 ceremonies, it's a lot. I'm just gonna aim for 1 cup a night, and whatever the lesson
Take
is, that's it.
It's a good lesson.
And and I remember I went up to you at the fourth ceremony and I was like, I'm not quite sure what to do. And you were like, did you purge? And I said, yes. And you said, then no more. Meditate.
So,
And I was like, all right, that's what I wanted to hear. And so I did. And it was nice because it also gave me more of a chance to let some of the other people helping with ceremony to have more of their experience. And I became like the first person on call for helping someone to the bathroom or anything like
nice.
that. And it was nice to really just sit. And then we had a night off after that. And then we had ceremony number 5, which was my favorite ayahuasca ceremony I've had yet. Oh,
Yay.
favorite is so hard to say. Like it's not unfair to rank them, but like perhaps, yeah, the best one ever.
What happened? What happened? I'm on the edge of my
Well,
seat.
yeah. So you mixed me the what I call the infinity blend.
You asked for more of experience, and if I remember correctly, you wanted to be in the visionary effects longer.
Hmm.
Some of the core things you asked for going in.
Yeah, so Hamilton had this other bottle that was off to his right hand side instead of his left hand side that was pink in coloration
The
and
pink
sweet.
ayahuasca, you call it. The big sweet ayahuasca.
And I noticed not many other, didn't notice anyone else get it, but I heard 1 or 2 other people did sometimes.
No, no, you did. You did. That night, no one else got it. That night, you were the only one to get the sweet pink ayahuasca.
And it was the first time in a long time that I kept the medicine down. And as soon as I drank that cup from you, my body went, "Oh, that tasted good." And I immediately knew I wasn't going to purge it up. And I was like, "Huh,
Beautiful.
that's an interesting sensation. Let's see if that sticks." And because I had been asking you also, I'd been planting the seed of like, "Hey, Hamilton, you've said people can trip for like 6 to 8 hours, just deep in the depths, and I just want to plant the seed that one of these nights I would really love to go to the DMT keeper's den
Just
and
plant the
riff."
seed. It was just planting a seed. No petition. No, please. I'm just gonna plant a seed if that's possible.
Yeah. But I kept asking for your breakthrough formula,
True,
not knowing
exactly.
better.
But I really want to be in there for like 6 to 8 hours. And why do other people have those experiences that I want to?
And so this ended up being the night where I got like the 6 hour experience because I
Mm,
kept the medicine down and blasted off into the most incredible places of love. It was very cool because we had there were 8 of us who stayed from the first 4 into the next 4. and there was a new group of maybe 10 people, 15 people who came in,
Yeah.
and it was one of the calmest ayahuasca ceremonies I've ever heard. Um, and it was almost like maybe a couple people purged via vomit, but just a couple. And what I noticed
Mhm.
was it felt like the room was having like gaseous purges. Like I was burping a lot. I could hear other people burping, and it felt like ayahuasca took the whole room in this beautiful womb, and it had almost like these buds of flowers, just sort of around the edges that would like open their mouth a little bit, and like gas would come out that would be the purge for the room. And it was just so, it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had, full of so much love and play and laughter for me. And it seemed like when ceremony was over, the vibe in the room was very full of love and excitement that many others had kind of shared in that experience of just peace and tranquility and fun and love in that ceremony. So I'm trying to remember, did I swim? I probably swam with dolphins, you know, did some things, and I really got to go to the core of creationism and
Mm.
sit in the DM keeper's den and riff. And
So what
that
happens when you do that for 6 hours? If, like on the outside, if I've never had this experience, I'm like, what are you doing there for 6 hours? What's it like?
it's a lot of learning information that doesn't have language to go with it.
Mm.
Um, it's a lot of going really into the core of how things are created, and seeing the energy at its little like gamma rays even. If you could visually see what our eyes can't actually perceive in vibrant energetic light as it moves and creates things, and as I could visually think something up and then watch it be created around me. It's an epic place to go for problem solving. There were a couple issues in my life that I went in, and it was almost like I entered a dojo where I could move things with my hands and problems in my life, and dance and explore the perceptual problem solving in different dimensional ways that aren't so apparent in our three-dimensional reality.
Mm.
And that was really cool. And so when you ended ceremony, I was still tripping balls, which was exactly what I wanted. And eventually that night, I went out to the pool, which is down near the Amazon River at the Heliconia. And my sister Jamila was there. And we were staring up at the moon, and it was so full. There was a full moon that night.
Mm.
And I started seeing all these hexagons in the moon. And then we were getting mauled by mosquitoes. And so I said, fuck it. All the lights are off. I'm going skinny dipping. And I took off all my clothes and I jumped in the pool naked. And then I was just like laying there looking up at the full moon, and these deer antlers started growing out of my head as I laid there in surrender with the feminine energy of the moon being witnessed by my sister in this like divine moment. Only later to find out it's called the stag moon. That was the moon that particular night.
Mm.
And that was phenomenal. And then yeah, I went back to my room and I was still tripping balls and just like so excited to just sit in it and lay in it.
Is that the longest you've ever been in that kind of a state with DMT?
I think so.
Mm.
The first time I met you in October, I had another time where I went back to my room and I was still kind of like really in it, maybe like the
Yeah.
last night of the four ceremonies that time. But this one was like super intentional, and all the things that had happened were super beautiful. And so I just I'd like love it and curl up in it like a blanket and
Mm.
enjoy it.
A beautiful night.
Yeah.
On
So,
your way in, what was it like on the way in? What was onset like? Like when you
hmm.
get into that deep place, what happens? Is there a portal? Is it kaleidoscopic? Are there patterns? Are there colors? What do you kind of go through?
Oh, yeah. I recently interviewed Daniel McQueen of the Medicinal Mindfulness Center in Boulder. Um, and he shared with me a sort of staging process that happens that I really relate to in my sort of DMT journey as well. And it's like that the onset is sort of this visual field. You start to see visuals of kaleidoscopy things. Usually for me, they're red, orange, and yellow colored in the onset, kind of like the DMT rising up in the mix. And then once I see my goblins, I know that I'm going to break through. And they're like these little circular headed creatures with these long, sharp teeth that for the longest time I just had no relationship with, and they wouldn't let me through the breakthrough. And so finally, I built a relationship with them. And now when I see them, I get so excited because I know that the breakthrough is coming next. And so
Hmm.
it's sort of like seeing them. They greet me, and I'm usually like, "Hey guys, remember, like, let's keep it love and light in here. Like, you're looking super scary. I'm not scared, but hello, hello, hello." And then they sort of soften up a bit. And I remember the first time I broke through on DMT, they took me to the waiting room, which is sort of the next stage that Daniel McQueen was telling me about. Seems to be a common thread for people, is this waiting room experience.
Hmm.
I don't really feel like I get a waiting room so much anymore. As I see the goblins, once I acknowledge them all, then they kind of dissipate. And then it's true, I do wait somewhere. Um, the first time was like a definitive waiting room, like a art gallery lobby.
Hmm.
And then they opened these doors and kind of like pushed me through the breakthrough.
Hmm.
Now it's much more of there's just like a moment of waiting in a space, and then the breakthrough onsets, and almost the kaleidoscope like visions and things completely shift into much more stabilized visual reality. Um, Depends. Yeah, depends. I don't always break through to like that stabilized different reality. I've had a lot of
Hmm.
breakthroughs that are a mix of both. What is that like for you?
Um, yeah, the first colors and patterns are common, and I think the colors and patterns are indicative of the state that you're in, or the state of the room, or the people. We spend a lot of time in that space, like working. So, I don't have as many experiences, which is just personal journeying, because I don't get to do that as often as I am holding ceremony for others. And when you do that, you kind of stay in different aspects of the journey and just work there. Um, but yeah, it goes from these kaleidoscopic patterns and colors, which I've always found to be fascinating, incredibly gorgeous, stunningly important, intricate. So I don't like just shrug them off as like, oh, they're the shapes, colors, and patterns. There's something about them that I find to be just whelmingly beautiful, and so I take those in usually with great fascination and love, and then it either goes from there to, like you're saying, like the presence of other kinds of spirits or other kinds of entities. And that really depends also when you're working with, like, the number of people you're working with and where they go and what they're connected with. Then you're also
Mm.
watching for what's in the room to make sure that there aren't other kinds of spirits that are coming from people into the room that you just want to watch out for, or what they're shedding, or what they brought. So there's that. And then it'll open up. It just opens up into this like deep trance state. And in the deep trance, I don't really experience a waiting room. I don't think I've ever experienced a waiting room. So that's kind of foreign
Mm.
mythology for me. It's a little bit different. Um, Although we have a place traditionally that we would go to, and it was always a palace of medicine. And so
Mm.
in that palace of medicine, there would always be the medicines present that we were going to then start to wield and work with in the ceremony. Um, but it wasn't like there was any time in essence to wait, I guess. Maybe it's different if you're on the recipient side of it, because you're just like, receiving and lying there. But we're always like very active already working. So in that sense, maybe we bypass that idea of a waiting room because we're like, already planning into another state. Um, and then, I mean, in terms of the entities and friends and stuff like that, like everyone has their allies, and everyone has their protective spirits and the ones that protect different spaces. And so when I hear things like goblins and stuff like that, I think like those are your protectors. They protect that space for you, and that's your entrance into the space. And they're kind to you. They're not like aggressive, and they don't try to take you over. And they're right. So it's like they're like these kind of like they're like like bodyguards. They're like in there. They protect that space, and you can tell them to chill out. And they're like, oh hey, I would see things like that, and I'd be like, hey guys, it's me, and they'd be like, oh hey, Master Hamilton, how's it going? Like, oh man, I just didn't recognize you there for a while. It was like, snap out of it, guys. We're buddies. What are you talking about? So
Yeah.
there's like that, but then there's so many. I mean, the things I've said many times is that there's just so many different shapes that energy can take, and they're made of energy. So there's just so many, it's like,
Mhm.
it's endless. It's just endless of how many you can meet. So there's that space as well. And then there are like the portals. There's like, I love when you say that all of a sudden this opened up for you. And then when it did, there was like a multi-dimensional field of vision. And that from there, the vision kind of started to align what was in the knowing space with the visual space. I think that's, you know, I think that's spot on. I think that that's exactly right. We're in that kind of visionary space a lot. And we train to have that connection between heart, third eye, and crown open so that that multi-dimensional field of vision is available. And so in that, you can go anywhere, you can be anywhere, you can commune or connect with anything once you train in it and you really kind of, wield it and that you're very comfortable with it. So we go into that state. Um, there's the in the room state, which is really interesting. Like when you say the other, like when all of a sudden you're in this other reality, there's that experience, but you're still in the room. So it's like you started in the ceremonial house, but now the ceremonial house isn't a ceremonial house, the one that you are in. It's this transformed, energetic, multidimensional field that everyone's suspended in that goes everywhere. So it's like that here, but now everywhere with everybody in it. That's like a really beautiful and amazing common state. That's the one I like, joke around calling the spaceship. That's the one I think is like, you're just, because you look around everywhere and it's just galaxies everywhere, it's stars everywhere. That's really beautiful space. And then like there's, like I said, the portals, the wormholes, the black holes, the intradimensional ways to travel and stuff. Those are always very interesting to me. Some had like their own gravity and you couldn't get away from, you couldn't get out of them, like you were going to go.
Mm.
Others you could pick and choose. It was also really common. And then on the other side of those is, well, just who knows whatever is going to be on the other side of those. Most of the
Mm.
time, it was just other places, other worlds, other spaces, or other planets, or other star systems. And the only thing I have to even go on was from Einstein that, there would be these distortions in space time that would allow for some kind of travel through them. And I didn't really understand that theory until I was experiencing these things in ayahuasca ceremonies. And I don't really understand the phenomena. I can't say, I can't describe like, oh, that's the phenomena that allows that to happen. It's just an Einsteinian theory, but there's the experience of it in consciousness. So we have those kinds of experiences. And then um, there's the interacting with different kinds of beings and then where they want to take you too. So I always found that really
Mm.
interesting. Like out of the shapes, colors, and patterns, maybe becomes like a dragonfly. And then it kind of starts to go and you go with it. And then
Mm.
that whole kaleidoscopic thing transforms into a tunnel or it kind of collapses. And as you're going with it, you kind of end up somewhere else. And then in those experiences, like the Amazonian mythology would come to life. There were the water worlds, there were space worlds, there were earthy looking worlds, there were other planets, it seemed kind of endless in that sense. It's hard to know if those visionary fields relate to actual places, like actual planets or actual star systems, or if they're just purely in this interdimensional field of energy and you're having it in a form of a vision. But it was repetitive and amazing. And that would all open up that way too. Those are all pretty, I mean, it's not quote common, right? But pretty normal in that sense of places that we would experience.
Yeah, pretty normal experiences. Um, I had I think night 6 or night 7 was like the darkest night I've ever had on ayahuasca,
Hmm,
where it
that's
was like
interesting.
I kept looking around, being like, who the fuck turned off the moon? The moon was just full. Like, who turned it off? There was no light in the house.
Hmm.
Um, and I couldn't, I mean, I even got, I kept finding my way to the bathroom portal, which you always warn people to not get stuck in the vortex of the bathroom.
You gotta be
But
careful about it.
I
You
had
gotta
the
be
one
careful about it.
stall. It became my stall.
I don't know how you can be stone cold sober in the room, end up in the bathroom, and be in like 10 out of 10 visions in the amount of time that it takes to go to the stall. I'm still trying to piece that one together, but it happens all the time. Did
Yeah,
you
it
find
was.
that night your stall? You found your specific portal?
Oh yeah, night after night, I would go back to the specific portal of safety and
Mm.
away from the rest of the room, but I could still hear you, and I could also hear you in my head when you'd be like, Barrett, you can't stay in the bathroom forever. You have to get out of the bathroom. And I'd be like, God damn it, do I really have to? Like, it's so safe in here. But one night I got lost coming back from the bathroom. Like, it was so dark, and I was trying to be so conscious of not shining my flashlight in people's eyes because some people go
Mm.
crazy in ceremony. And I remember I like kept seeing all these people that I didn't recognize on my way back to my mat, which was just along the wall. All I had to do was follow the wall. And I was like, who are these people? Wait, okay, two. I should be the next mat. Whose stuff is that? That's not my stuff. Kept going. I'm like, wait, now I'm at the front. I'm up by Hamilton. This is too far. Wait, how did I get here? Like, I got lost. As a seasoned
Wow.
medicine taker, super lost.
At least you're still in the ceremonial house with us.
Yeah, I don't think I could get out. But then I was like, okay, wait, logic. You can use logic. If I'm at the front, then I should be 2 mats back on the right. Like, I just, again, follow the wall. And it's like, but that stuff's not mine. And I was like, well, maybe what if it is your stuff? And it turned out it was my stuff. So
What stuff did you have there?
it was like a blanket I didn't recognize and my black shawl. Like, not a lot of stuff, but just enough where I was like, oh, not mine. Yeah, so I understand now how people get lost in the house. It's an important lesson.
The distances can be distorted. It can certainly seem like, the distances are further and closer and things like that. Did you experience any kind of distortions like that in your perception, or was it just the disorientation of your stuff versus not your stuff?
It was pretty gnarly. I mean, night 6 and 7 were really weird for me, especially
Mm.
after the glorious night number 5. Night 6 and 7 were uncomfortable. There was even a point on night 6 where I was like, damn, when is Hamilton gonna wrap this shit up? And I think I looked at my phone and it was like 8 o'clock. It was like 8:30, 8:28 to be exact. And I was like,
Mm.
holy shit, not anytime soon. I better get comfortable.
It's still really early. I'm not getting out of this like that.
So, and then you went into like round 2 of the ceremony, and it actually became one of the most fun ceremonies ever. I think that was the night you sang about Rainbow Roller Disco Jesus. And then it was like the next night after that, I was like, oh my God, we've been in ceremony for like 10 hours. Doesn't Hamilton know we've got to leave tomorrow? Like, we need sleep. And I looked at my phone again and it was 8:28. So
28.
I was like, holy shit, what's up with 8:28?
So what's that lesson? What do you think's coming through in that lesson?
Mm.
The time distortion lesson.
Well, time's not real.
Hmm.
So it's all our perception and what we're doing. And so, what was going on for me that made me want to get out? I think that was the night everything was real dark and I was really having to fight the visions. And I was calling upon the Arcturians and stuff to like brighten it up. There were some negative things around that I was just like, where did this come from? How did this happen? Like, I'm good. Y'all go away. And
Hmm.
sending that, blocking it, and calling in some good forces that just seemed
Mm-hmm.
to sit in darkness until I eventually was taken even farther and got it was sort of up to me to kind of dig myself out of that one and what I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about. And I was like, okay, I'm being really focused on the darkness and the negative. What if I start to focus on something else? And then everything kind of lifted and changed, and I got to dance in the core of creationism and problem solve and go into a really complex problem I was thinking about and kind of essentially dance with it. And then the more I started
Mm.
dancing and playing with it, it was almost like I could grab the fabric of whatever it was I was looking at with my finger and spiral it around and dance like a ballerina with it. Um, and that really changed everything for me. So yeah, I don't know why I wanted out of ceremony so badly that night.
It's a great lesson, though, to move from darkness to light and to move from wanting to have it be over to finding something really beautiful on the other side of it. That's a good lesson. That transition's a good lesson. We, on the practitioner side of it, are working all the time to move it from dark to light. So people naturally inherently come with a bunch of stuff in them that represents dark. And so every week is a week where you can't just rest on your laurels and just expect dark to become light. You actually work it. You work medicine, you call on different allies and helpers and different spirits that you work with. You process it, it churns in the room, it's purged from the room. The sanctuary holds as it's processing. It's not instantaneous. It takes sometimes even days for people to process through their emotional states and their psychological states. There's this period of time of neuroplasticity when the neural network is changing in our brains, and we have, individually and collectively a lot that we're processing. And so I think that's a good lesson to realize that we're not stuck with the journey that we're being provided. We don't just have to
Mm-hmm.
go along with it, but that there's actually something we can do to alter it. And so it sounds like you're getting active, you're practicing, you're and then ultimately breaking through. Like the Arcturians, what did they have to say about that? Did they get in there and lighten it up? You called on them to do it?
I did, yeah. I think that was night 7 or night 8, where it was. Yeah, it must have been. It was that super dark night, and I think this was while I was in the bathroom portal, and I was like, "Hey, Arcturians!" And again, they didn't come. They didn't come, and I went, "Okay, what have I learned while I've been on ayahuasca?" And that is that I have to. I've channeled them before with a channeler, and they tend to sit in a ship in like the fifth dimension, and I have to go to that ship to meet with them because they can their frequency can be disruptive here in this plane. So we sort of went, okay, I'm going to go to the ship, and I was like, I'm not going to the ship, and then I was like, okay, wait, no, I have to go through the crown to go to the ship. I don't go through the third eye visual field. I go through the crown now. And so I ported up to the ship, and sure enough, there they were. And I had this awful rash, skin rash going
Mm,
on for the entire trip, all on my neck. It kind of went up into my face. It was on my eyelids. I'm still battling some of that off me. It's like
mm,
on my arms still.
mm,
But I got it to go away on my neck and my face. And so the Arcturians, I was telling them about, I've got this skin rash, and they put all these little blue light beings inside of me. They must have put maybe like 10,000 of them that went in and started trying to attack what was going on.
mm,
Um, and so that was interesting because I could feel like little zaps going on and around. And then there was one Arcturian specifically that I was meeting with, and we were looking at Earth from the ship. And that was a really cool perspective to have. And we were talking about my purpose, and I said, I'm confused. There's the things I want to do, there's the things I'm being pulled to do that I don't want to do. I just want more play. How do I work more play into all of it? And it sort of showed me um, like a way out, like an ejection from the matrix, really. Of it's one of those like moonshot kind of discoveries of, aha, life could be so incredibly different from how life is now, and it is so fucking different. How do I get from where I'm at now to there?
mm.
Which is a lot of my integration process now, is really figuring out how to connect those dots. Um, and so for me, that's actually starting with a nonprofit that I'm starting to receive donations so that I can actually give away more of what I do to people in need. instead of
Mm.
having a certain price point that really has to be met for everyone. Um, Receiving donations from those who understand the importance of helping people heal from their trauma and things to begin to fund that. Um, so that's part of it. And it was just
Beautiful.
interesting to have that zoomed out download. And they were like, "You think that we're not here supporting you? We're here supporting you. We're rooting for you. Just call upon us more, and we will show up." So, yeah, that's a good reminder for me right now to call on them a little bit more. And yeah,
Amazing. I think it's a really important lesson to understand that the allies that we have in ceremony are allies we have all the time,
mm-hmm.
and that we can work with them all the time. And I think that as we bring that into our spiritual development, the gift that that gives us is tremendous. And the only way you would ever know is to do it. So it doesn't work theoretically. You have to put it into action. So let's call on our allies and see how they continue to shape and benefit and support what we're doing here. It's a big deal to be alive in the physical form, and the 3D, the human body is a really big deal. And so we need all the help we can get. So for anyone who knows they have allies and spirit guides and guardian angels and other forms of spirit helpers, call on them, and continue to call on them every day, once or twice a day, and see what kind of benefit you can ultimately receive from them.
It's great advice, which kind of makes me want to segue into one of your upcoming launches of the mystery school. What's going on with
It's a
that?
long time coming. Yeah, it's a long time coming. So, we just recently launched the Blue Morpho Academy. And for, I would say, the last 15 years, I've been dabbling with and playing with the idea of what kind of school or institution we could be, and what kind of academy we could, how do you teach this? How do you share this on a bigger level? And so we just launched certification programs. And there's 4 levels of certification programs, and they go in order. And while I went through that process, and it was amazing, we have an incredible cohort. There's a tremendous number of students in it. There's over 100 students in it right now, which is fascinating and
Wow.
incredible experience. Yeah. And so what a kickoff for the academy. So that's just been a very successful launch. And in it, I realized that there's a lot of people as well that want to have a personal development mystery school. It's for them. They're not going to be probably working in the sacred plant industry, or they want to just share this with friends and family. And so a lot of people are asking for a real world Hogwarts, an X-Men school, an Xavier campus kind of scenario. And so we decided to launch one. It's a long time in the making. I've talked to a lot of people about it over the years, but the certification programs will continue to roll out, and we'll be doing the cohorts once a quarter. And the mystery school will be all the time. And so that's going to launch in probably 6 weeks to 2 months from now. So in late August, so September, October. I'd say in October we're fully launched, and we'll be enrolling people into the mystery school. It'll be a month by month commitment and a month by month experience, and you'll get a membership to the academy. You'll get invited to academy events, and the mystery school itself will be both online and in person. So it'll be virtual and in person. And there will be lectures and classes, and we'll get other teachers and coaches from around the world to also come and support and share their knowledge and wisdom. And then there will be homework assignments, all involving visionary plants or psychedelic journeys, so that we can be a global community with collective intention, learning through the intention, going into the real mysteries of these experiences like navigation and protection, and how do we connect with guides, and what universal knowledge is there for us, and how do we have these relationships, and really breaking it all down for everybody in the academy. And then also creating that global community around really elite practice. So a common thing I heard was that people just don't know where to find a teacher in this space. They want a human teacher. They want somebody that they can rely on, and to help them learn more. And so I thought I was in a unique position to be able to support the community in this way. And I wanted to give back. And so I thought, yeah, now is a good time to be able to form this mystery school and invite everybody who's interested into it.
Oh, fuck yeah. And I can absolutely attest to you being the most incredible teacher. It's like, thanks to your teachings, I've had my own shamanic battles for my clients and won. and felt equipped to know how to win, and loved having you in my corner being like, hey, just remember, you may not lose. You must always win. Other
You
people
may
could
not
lose.
lose.
And it's opened up so much for me that I look forward to studying more with you. And what's one kind of example of something that will be taught in the Mystery School?
Well, I think the greatest technology we're going to teach is the technology of sanctuary. And
Mm.
sanctuary is something that I worked on for my whole career, but specifically the last 15 years, to be able to create absolute safety for these kinds of experiences. And so learning how to hold, I mean, the very first lesson in shamanic practice is how to define and hold space. So you start a ceremony in your living room, or you start it in a park, or you start it outside, in a maloka, or you start it wherever. But you now define that. Is it a medicine space? What are your protections in the space? So that's like the very first lesson. And over the years, I wanted to learn how to define it as a true sanctuary, a sanctuary of protection, a sanctuary of communion with the highest energies and the highest frequencies, a sanctuary to be able to purge the lower energies and frequencies, sanctuary to learn in from the greatest allies and greatest teachers, known and unknown, uh, to be able to explore the cosmos and our great mysteries like the event horizons that we live with, like Big Bang, what comes before Big Bang, what was there before the emergence of what we know of as this universe, what is source, what's beyond the universe itself, if there is anything, even what is the mystery of matter. And like, so all the things we study in physics, and to do that exploration through our consciousness, we need a sanctuary. And so fundamentally a lesson would be what sanctuary is, how to invoke it, how to work with it, how to trust it, how to be able to be safe and protected within it, how to work with others in it. That's like one. Another one would be allies, how to meet your allies, how to work with your allies, how to ally with source, and how to then use source as a source for other kinds of allies, how to make those relationships. Another lesson would be about destiny and who you are and why you're alive and how you're a unique miracle and what it means to have a destiny and be living that destiny, and how to make that